The September issue of Exceptional Parent magazine focuses on the elderly and those who care for them. Sign up for free and read it today at www.epmagazine.com.
Oscar Mike Radio is a proud podcast partner of Reach Across America Radio, heard every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. They're also big supporters of the nonprofit I Got Your Six, Two Lives at Once. And with every wreath you sponsor through Oscar Mike Radio, $5 goes back to this great organization dedicated to making a difference in the lives of veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders battling PTSD. Two Lives at Once pairs these brave men and women together with dogs rescued from kill shelters. In this way, two lives are saved at the same time by saving each other. Donate now. Go to reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio to help. That's reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio.
Suicide is preventable, and each of us has a role to play in suicide prevention.
Suicide is complex. There is no single cause.
And it's not always a mental health issue. It could be loss of a job or home, financial or relationship issues, pain, or leaving the military.
Suicide does not discriminate. It affects all ages, races, and genders, veterans or not.
If you know a veteran who is struggling, connect with them. Let them know help is available.
There is quick and easy access to services in times of crisis.
Dial 988, then press 1. Talking about it is okay.
Don't keep it inside. Don't be ashamed. Don't wait. Reach out.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Hello and welcome again to Oscar Mike Radio. My name is Travis, Marine Corps veteran and your host. Oscar Mike Radio is part of the Hubazoo Network. You can find out more on hubazoo.com. I want to thank my sponsors, Joyce Asek of Asek Real Estate, Army National Guard veteran Mark Holmes of Reapers Detailing and Power Washing, and my supporters, Cason Shaving Company and Exceptional Parent Magazine. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute. I've seen Travis's bald head, but I've got another guy I've seen last month with the same haircut. What's going on here? Folks, it's all good. It's under control. We've got this. You've got a Green Beret and a Marine in the same, console together. It's all good. Like I told you last month in October, we got to meet, thank you, Rico, player of Parade Deck, Ben Monnette, who, served in the Army, had, transitions and things going on, and has started, a new life in a lot of different areas. He's definitely a mission flight Oscar Mike kind of guy, and more is always more. So instead of going small, I said, hey, Ben, let's have 4 shows. And he was like, that's cool. So this is part 2, and we're going to dig into, if you watched the last show, and I'll have that link in the Oscar Mike Radio show post, you understood that we were kind of like, Ben had been on his way out of the military, and now we're moving into, his involvement with Treehouse Recovery. That's a long introduction, and I know, but Ben, welcome back to Oscar Mike Radio. Thank you so much. I had a great conversation, part 1. This is kind of part 2, but it's not. Thank you again, sir.
Yeah, thank you again. It was amazing to be able to share my story, and I look forward to just providing and being able to talk about another phenomenal resource for active duty veterans and individuals struggling out there. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And you know, when I got connected with you through Rico, it was like a checklist of all the stuff you had done and accomplished, but it became real apparent that you were really proud of not only what Treehouse Recovery in Nashville had done for you in a hard time in your life, but the fact you were able to get involved with that organization and use what you learned to help others. So I'm interested in it all. We've got well, not all the time in the world, but we got a lot of time ahead of us. Let's pick it up. You're transitioning, you're going through the Treehouse Recovery program. And I guess the first thing is, what is Treehouse Recovery and how is it different than like a normal 30-day drug rehab program?
Yeah. Um, ooh, there's a lot of things different. So first and foremost, our program is 3 months long, which the minimum amount is 3 months long. And oftentimes it goes to 6 months and beyond. And in part one, we talked about how important it is and how much time it takes to create new habits, but also break bad habits.
Right.
So Treehouse understands that, and their goal is to be the last treatment facility anybody goes to, right? So by having that goal, that end state, they created it for 3 to 6 months long. Now there's a program in place that's called the Protectors Program, that is an active duty program, and it is a 45-day program with a reassessment at 30 to see if we can push it to longer, because we understand that commanders need soldiers, and if we can get someone for 45 days, 45 days is better than zero. However, I was fortunate enough to go to the 3-month long program out in Costa Mesa, California. So first of all, that's the difference, is the duration of our program. Secondly, our program is structured. There's structure in place in our program, and when I say that, I know active duty veterans can understand what structure means. There's time hacks, there's be in the right place, the right uniform, right time. And those are the things that veterans and active duty members follow very well. So the transition period, the adapting into our program for an active duty or veteran is an easier transition because we know that lifestyle. We focus on physical fitness to heal the brain, and I'll dive down deeper into that, but that's what separates us vastly from a lot of treatment facilities, is we get you moving, we get you active, whether or not that you've.
There's a real component there where physical activity truly helps heal the mind and spirit.
100%.
Really? Okay.
And chemically, what is released during exercise, it's the same thing what individuals in addiction are seeking. And again, I'll go into depth on
Sure.
that. But so the physical fitness aspect of it, and when I say physical fitness, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you are right out of active duty and you can run a 13, 14-minute 2-mile, or you're a veteran who can, it's hard to lift the barbell, right? As long as you're coming in and you're moving your body and moving your brain, that's all we ask. Moving into that, the fact that the knowledge that I learned at Treehouse, we all know, substances are bad. And when I talk about addiction, the two things always come to mind, right? Drugs and alcohol. Well, guess what? There's a lot of other addictions out there that have just as much of a negative impact on individuals. And I equate addiction as anything that is controlling your life negatively, whether it's in a domain of financial, irresponsibility, personal, your intimate life, with your relationships, your professional life with coworkers or your job. There's various different other addictions. A lot of people just hone in on those two specifics, but when I talk throughout this segment, addiction, that we all know that there's unhealthy gambling, porn, social media addiction. All these addictions, affect the mind in a similar way as drugs and alcohol. Third is the fact that we have 4 counseling sessions a week.
4.
And 4 counseling sessions a week, where 2 of them are with our primary, counselor. For me, it was about probably 75%, PTS, operator syndrome, moral injury, these new studies, TBI, handling that, and 25% addiction. But nonetheless, I was able to, on a consistent weekly basis, have therapy sessions that progressed. The other 2 therapy sessions that we have are our writing program. And oftentimes people are like, well, writing program, what good is that? And so our writing program is a little different. We'll have an assignment, you write down your assignment, and then the next counseling session, you will read that to your counselor and you go through that and have a session pertaining to what was written. Why that's beneficial is because our brains are going 3,000 miles a minute, right? And when you put pen to paper, for me, I was able to slow my brain down and be able to really work through my thoughts and articulate my thoughts on paper. And when I was able to read it, it was just another form of hearing my struggles, but also talking it through a licensed counselor too.
You're training your mind to repair itself. The body's helping the mind. Is there any kind of spiritual or emotional component to the recovery program?
Yeah. Spiritual, for me, I was able to go to, there's a phenomenal church. And again, I'm talking about the Costa Mesa one.
Yeah.
Treehouse Recovery has a 3 to 5 month program in Costa Mesa and then Portland, Oregon. And soon to be, by the end of this year, early 2025, one in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
We also have, in those locations, we have an IOP, which is 3-hour sessions a week, right? The one in the Treehouse Recovery in Nashville, Tennessee, is the IOP,
And what's
which was able to,
IOP mean? Just
intensive outpatient.
Okay.
So it's more of I'm working. I have a job, a steady job, but from 6 to 10 o'clock Wednesday, Friday, and then 8 o'clock in the morning till 11 on Sunday, I was at the Treehouse Recovery IOP here in Nashville. Just another continuation of care, but a step down, a little less invasive as our inpatient, our what we call as PHP, partial hospitalization program, the 3 to 5 month programs in Costa Mesa and Portland, Oregon. The fourth, I would say almost one of the most important things for me, and a lot of people, and you'll get this, and every veteran, and active duty member listening will get this, is we're in a big room, and all veterans are there. Sooner than later, Green Berets will go in this corner, SEALs will go in this corner, Marines will all isolate into where we feel comfortable in our groups, right?
Yeah.
Well, what Treehouse does is, yes, we serve active duty veterans, but also we serve and provide treatment for any individual who wants to enter our program. So what this does for a veteran is it enables and shows him that he can form these strong bonds, these lasting relationships with another individual that may not have served, right, but has gone through the similar struggles as him, as himself. So that was very critical for me, is spending so much time in the military. That's all I really knew, and being able to form a relationship, a brotherhood with another individual who did not serve, was very powerful for me. And then the fifth thing and the last is, our program is, it's, and I hate to say it, but it is kind of like a big boy rule. Like, we have at 5 o'clock, 5 p.m., I guess about 5:30, you're off for the day, and you go back to the team house, and you live with the guys that are in treatment with you, and you cook dinner together, you clean, you watch TV together, you are a normal person back into a society, and you're not isolated in a facility. You're not isolated in the middle of woods. You are part of Costa Mesa. And then on the weekends you have off. So for me, I Sundays I'm with the church, so the spiritual aspect was there. And they don't frown upon it, but we know that some people aren't at that spiritual level. We don't want to not provide care for someone who is not, may or may not be a believer or at that spiritual level. I went to church on Sundays, Saturdays. I'd go ride my bike down to the beach. I'd hang out with the guys, watch the UFC fights, and really prove to myself that I could have fun without, partaking in the negative habits that I had in the past. So those are the really the five main components, and I can't wait to dive deeper into all those. And for me, I have a unique perception on this, because I have gone to a 30-day program that was in a more isolated hospital setting facility. And as you all listen in part one, that didn't provide me the tools, the skills, for what I needed. Treehouse did, and Treehouse saved my life, and I wholeheartedly can say that Treehouse Recovery has given me those skills, those tools. But what also I want to impose or really hit home is, treatment is the easy part. Right?
Really?
Everyone can be successful in treatment. Everyone is maybe majority of individuals can be successful in treatment because you are in a community that doesn't drink or doesn't use a negative behavior to cope with life. When you go back home from treatment, that's when the real work happens. That's when life is going to come at you, financial problems, relationship problems, work problems, all these things that what we used to do to cope, we can't cope anymore. And remember when I said in part one how miserable I was when I took away my only coping mechanism. Well, now I have these coping mechanisms that I can handle life. So that's, yes, treatment is difficult, but when you are back home and you have life to deal with, and life is going to throw you, many different hurdles, that's when, the skills and the tool sets that you learn at Treehouse is going to be implemented.
You start implementing these and learning these through your treatment. You were clear that 30 days was not enough time.
Correct.
Just didn't work. It didn't give you what you needed. So you're going through Treehouse Recovery. It's more intense in terms of counselor time, more attention to your body, more attention to your community, your spirituality. When did it start coming to you that, what, hey, I don't know what the future's going to be like, but I think I've got it right this time? treehouse is right for me?
Yeah. I would say probably end of month one. We have a curriculum that we go through. And when I understood the fact of the battle between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex, the parasympathetic versus the sympathetic nervous system, when I fully understood that, it was like the memes where the light bulb went off on the top of my head. And for any service member, active or post, our limbic state of mind has kept us alive. We've relied on that freeze, flight, or fight or flight, right? And we have used that so much, but also we didn't. That's all we knew. So when stress came to me, my limbic system was the one that took control. And the limbic system is not the executive function, not the reasoning part of it. So I was able to overshadow my prefrontal cortex, my reasoning of, I know alcohol is bad. I know that I'm an alcoholic, but my limbic system was like, I don't care. I know a way. I know a way to solve this problem, and my limbic system was taking control. I think that is one of the main things of, especially why alcohol and drugs are very, prominent in our culture, is because our limbic state controls us, and we're so used to that. Well, we don't necessarily think of the consequences or who we're going to hurt, what we're going to do when our limbic system is taken in control. And it's like a light switch. And I think for us, we've always used that to our benefit. So our brain is like, okay, well, that's worked in the past. Let's use it here, right? And not being able to take a step back and regulate that. That was probably the moment that I was like, huh, okay. So I'm not just, okay, I get it. Like, drinking's bad, but I never really fully understood what was really going on in between my ears to cause me to go back and back and back after I, woke up the next morning and was like, man, I feel like death. I don't want to do this anymore. But then I went back and back and continued to do it, understanding that, knowing the why I was doing X, Y, and Z, was the part where I was like, I got it. I don't, and when I say I got it, trust me, like, I still make mistakes. I still fail. I embrace failure. But there's one no fail for me, and me personally, is I can't ever drink again. And I know that, and I'm comfortable with that, and I'm content with that. But I've given my ability to fail at other aspects, and that's okay. And those two parts of the knowledge and me really coming to terms with, fail once, fail again, fail better. I was like, okay, I think I might be on the right path now. And there's good days and bad days, but I know my tools.
Just one thing I want to clarify in my mind. I've been told by certain people, and I'll be candid with you, I disagree with them, that addiction is disease, not a choice. And I feel, just with what I've observed in my own life and in my experiences with, other people I know and family members, that they didn't go down to the train station or the movie theater and catch addiction. They made a choice to get there. But I wondered what you thought about it, because as much as, addiction is part of your life now, you have to make a choice every day to not be addicted. So I'm curious if you could kind of clarify that for me.
Yeah. So I agree with you, and I disagree. I think that I agree 100% that is a choice. Every single day, I choose to not drink, right? However, I think that certain people have an addictive mindset, addictive personality. And there's studies coming out of different, different genetics, and is it passed along or whatnot. What I believe is we are addicted to the dopamine rush that we get. And the way that we've received that dopamine rush is an unhealthy way. That forms the disease. We are not a addict. We're not an alcoholic, and this is how Treehouse views it. And this is another thing different is we don't view individuals as addicts or alcoholics. We do view it as a disease. We view it as a disease for seeking dopamine, right? And when I say seek dopamine, and if anybody has ever been, I would argue that 99% of individuals fall into this one category as either A, they've struggled with addiction, B, they have a loved one struggling with addiction, or C, they have a coworker struggling with addiction. One way or the other, an individual nowadays in our society is affected by someone they know who's in active addiction, right? There's two different people. One person that can have a couple of drinks, put it down, and be done. And there's other people that won't put it down until they fall asleep or pass out or whatever, right? Those are the two different individuals. And that person who can't put it down is that person who is seeking that dopamine. Is I need, so especially for veterans, our dopamine to reach our satisfying amount of dopamine is a lot higher than someone who may or may not have, served, right? Going into combat, going into training, doing hard things. When we get out of a hard environment, hard training environment, or whatever, our dopamine is increased. We get that connection, we get the oxytocin when we connect with another person, we get all these chemicals and we get these feel-good chemicals. Well, that continues to elevate. And now when we start indulging in unhealthy behaviors that get us to that same level of dopamine that we're used to, that's when addiction becomes a difficult thing to combat, right? It's because
physiologically.
Yes.
So to coin a phrase, the spirit is willing, like you don't want to be addicted anymore, but the flesh is like, hey, I need, that becomes a real, like, deep-seated need to get that dopamine hit, is what you're saying.
Yes, our brain is very powerful, but
Okay.
our limbic system can't discern from right versus wrong.
Okay.
Right? That's the prefrontal cortex. So that's why the veteran population struggles with addiction, is because we are so used to living in our limbic state that when we come into a confrontation or a time where our limbic is engaged, we don't have our rationale part of our brain to be like, wait a minute, this is not the right thing to do. But we react instead of understand and respond, right? So that is an aspect of how Treehouse views addiction. And when I talked about the physical fitness portion of it, is when you work out, right? There's chemicals released in your brain, right? It's called brain-derived neurotrophic factors. At the end of the day, what we really need to know is that dopamine is released when we work out. When we conduct any exercise, our dopamine is being released in our brain. When you see a workout on the board at Treehouse, and these workouts are pretty difficult, right? Or you see a task on the board at work, or you have something that you look at and you're like, that's going to be difficult, right? And then you accomplish that sense of satisfaction, that reward that you get enhances and increases your dopamine levels. So what we're doing at Treehouse with working out is we're not only creating bonds with individuals, and we're not only accomplishing tasks that look very difficult, but we're also training our brain to understand that if I do this, I get the same amount of dopamine as I may get from, drugs or alcohol or other unhealthy behaviors. So that training, that creating a new pathway, a new event in your body or your mind, that's like, okay, stressful event A happens. I can choose. Now this comes to your choice, right?
Right,
I
right.
can choose one of two ways. I can go choose to get this dopamine in an unhealthy way, or I can choose to do a various different techniques or practices to get this dopamine in a healthy way. So what we're doing is we're creating that. A lot of times we focus so much on our neck down, right? Supplements, working out, eating healthy, all this stuff. But what we really need to do is start focusing on our neck up. And what is our brain? How are we training our brain? And that's where the workout begins to start training your brain. Right after we work out, that's when we go into our academic setting. So I know anyone who works out afterwards, they feel refreshed. They
Yeah.
feel more alert. They feel like, okay, now I'm awake. They're more attuned to what's going on around them. You put that individual who has all those things after workout into an academic setting, they're going to learn more. But most importantly, they're going to be able to recall that information in times of stress. That's the reason why we have workout in the morning straight into an academic environment, is to prime the brain, to get the blood flowing, to get that dopamine in our bodies, feeling great, alert. Boom, start learning. Let's learn about, different mechanisms. Let's learn about what our brain is doing in active addiction. Let's learn about the cycles of cravings. Where can we catch them? What can we do, before we get to that point of no return? What can we do? Who can we reach out to? What are our resources? How powerful is community, right? All those things are gained in the academic setting. And then you get done, and that's when, the 4-hour counseling session happens.
Now,
And then,
tell me about the counseling
yes,
session because, some people, including myself, don't really feel very good about going to counselors for a lot of reasons. It can be hard to, well, the thing I've always wondered, I've never had to go to a counselor for my military service, but I always wondered, like, what's a counselor who's never, been to boot camp or, military style, setting going to understand about the military experience, regardless if you're Air Force, Coast Guard, you know, special forces, whatever.
yeah.
How can that person relate to and get on that veteran's level to understand what's going on and help them? I've always wondered that, and I don't know if I'm just, oversimplifying it, but it just seems like there'd be a disconnect there right from the get-go.
Yeah, and the disconnect happens from the user or
The veteran side.
the veteran side,
Okay.
right? And if I come into a counseling session with a closed mindset of he's not going to understand because he's not a veteran, then you're not going to get anything out of it, right? So
Okay.
it starts with the person. And for me, um, one phenomenal thing about Treehouse is I would say 95% of Treehouse employees were past clients.
Oh, wow.
So we know that it's worked. We know that it can continue to work, and we can relate, right? We relate to the addiction portion. So we understand that. For me, when I dealt with a lot of PTS, and PTS for me and how I view it is, there's an individual who may not have served a day in their life, but they've went through some traumatic experiences. They've gotten in a car accident, and then now they can't drive, right? Or they get sweaty palms when they get in traffic or whatever, right? That is a form of PTS, right? The form that I experienced was just different, but there's still some commonalities between that. And So, I urge someone to keep an open mind with that, and B, you know, once I did that and I had that open mind, I was able to talk through and explain to that person, my counselor, what I was going through, right? And I was able to sit there and say, "Hey, this is what happened. This is how I felt." And when they asked questions, I was able to rephrase, use different, feeling words or different things, how I felt, how I coped with it on the back end. And guess what? I coped with it with alcohol. And my counselor used to be, addicted to substances. So he knew that. So although the PTS portion of it may not be of, I understand what you're going through on that level because I've lost another brother in combat, that person understood that, yes, I've lost friends due to addiction. I've lost things on other levels. So there's parallels, not, not similar, but there's definitely parallels that you can draw from it. For me now, as the military outreach for Treehouse Recovery, if there's a veteran or active duty that calls admissions or gets connected to Treehouse one way or the other, he'll come, I will talk to him. Right. So for me, I can articulate what I went through in my military career, how I struggled. Also, I struggled with unhealthy behaviors with drinking. So I can create that instant credibility, and I know how that person's feeling, may not specifically, because that's their experience and their emotions, their trauma, but I can definitely relate. And oftentimes when I talk to them and we can relate on those certain topics, like, okay, well, let's get help. Let's get you the help that you deserve. Let's change your life around. And if it's Treehouse Recovery, and if you're a good fit, great. And if it's not, and you're not a good fit, then let's find you someplace else to go. At the end of the day, what Treehouse focuses on is getting help, or getting these individuals help. Because we all know that one size shoe doesn't fit all in recovery. But that doesn't mean I'm not here to be like, well, if you're not going to Treehouse, see you later. It's okay. Well, we're going to try to get you there because it saved my life and it saved many other people's lives. But if that's not the case, there's other options and there's other resources that I built that I can help with that. And
So,
Treehouse is perfectly fine with that.
so let's step back a little bit. You go through the Treehouse program, you come out of it. What was life like when you got out of Treehouse Recovery and started having to build maybe new behaviors, new communities, new teams, new ways of doing things when you first got out?
Yeah, that was I was fortunate
Yeah.
because what I did is I went from being in Nashville area. Um, I was able to go to the 3 month long program in Costa Mesa, and then directly move into the program here in Nashville, Tennessee, the IOP. So I did that for 6 months. So 3 months of inpatient, the PHP, the partial hospitalization program. But then I transitioned. I think I landed on a Friday back in Nashville, and on a Sunday I started that program. So that was a smooth transition. And then I created, that was now my community. Treehouse Recovery Nashville was my community. And I worked out with them, same philosophies that we go through. We work out, and then we have a academic peer setting, and that's what enabled me to continue to handle life, right? I.e., right, the recovery aspect of it, but also continue to build a community within the Treehouse domain. Understand that that is not available to that path, the 3 to 6 month path, and then move into an IOP, a kind of a step down level of care, is not available for everyone. And that where I also come into play with Treehouse is if a veteran goes to Treehouse afterwards, they reach out and say, "Hey, I'm going back to Oklahoma." Like, okay, here are programs, here are some nonprofits, here are ways to insert yourself into a community and continue building yourself. Because this is a marathon. And we're not used to marathons. We're used to short sprints, short, really, actionable things and accomplishments. But life is a marathon, recovery is a marathon, and be able to continue to build a community, identify resources, have people out there that support you and love you. That's why I've tried to help other veterans as they're graduating the 3 or 6 month program at Treehouse.
But still, the option to continue in the IOP was there, and you took it. What I'm curious about now is you go through the 3 month, you go through the IOP, you build this new way of life. When it say, you know what, Ben, you're saying to yourself, I don't want to be on the sideline anymore. I feel that I've healed enough that I can give back to other veterans and other people and help them with their journey. Take me through that, because that's not inconsequential. That's a big shift in your thinking to say, I believe I can do that. Take me through that,
Yeah.
please.
Well, I think it started that mentality of helping, giving back, paying it forward. Started at, on my first deployment in 2012, where I trained indigenous forces. I gave back, right? I helped. And I started to learn, like, that is the best form of therapy for me. If I'm able to, and that's where the transition, to answer your question, is when I graduated that 6 month IOP program, and I felt to myself that this program helped save my life. How can I help others? I can't sit on the sidelines. I can't sit there and just solely focus on me. And once I knew that, and talking with my community, right? I have different communities out there, and one is with Nick Lavery, and I talked to him about this exact thing. Saying, I'm at this crossroads where I feel that I can start helping other people. I feel like I can take on some of their burdens, and he sat there and said, "Then do it. But guess what? You're going to have to be able to share your story." And I always knew that, but once I began comfortable talking to other people about my mistakes, the things that's happened to me, I knew that I was ready to start helping people and showing that person on the other end of the phone or video call that there's hope, that you are not alone, right? And especially for the veterans, we're all, like you said earlier, we all accomplish things as a team. Very few times in the military that you accomplish something by yourself.
Right.
So why tackle a massive issue, problem, unhealthy behavior by yourself? You can't. And that's, and I started finding more people out there that do the same thing, and more organizations that understand that this is a pandemic. This is an issue that we need to resolve. And that kind of just kept going and going. And I began to see the impact that I could have. Although I wish I could have a much larger impact. But every podcast I do, every speaking engagement I do, if I can just help that one person to take a objective look at what their choices are and be like, maybe I need to get some help, then that's the satisfaction that I seek every day.
You make this change. It's a huge transition. You're not in a combat focused job. You're in a, assistance recovery support role. What's it been like working with the people at Treehouse Recovery in Nashville or maybe even California where you did your treatment, to do this mission now because, you're in a different type of team, doing a different type of a role.
Yeah, that is transitioning is difficult from
Yeah.
a combat arms or non-combat arms, a military environment to a civilian environment is difficult. Things are done differently.
Yep.
Communication flows differently. People aren't on meetings 15 minutes early. Like we're all remember if you're 15 minutes
Minutes early,
early,
you're on
you're
time.
you're on time.
You're on time,
Exactly,
you're
right?
late.
Yes. Those are all the things that I've experienced. And patience, right? For me, being able to use those skills of understanding that I'm at a different position. I'm at a new journey in my life, a new season, and humbling myself. I know Tom Satterley from All Secure Foundation. He said one day, he said, "No one really cares what you did in the military," and that was, and I
That's
was
tough
like,
to hear sometimes, but that's the
"It is. It's
truth.
humbling. It is very true. It was very humbling." And I told him a couple weeks afterwards, I was like, I had to really digest that and really think about that. But that is true. And he's like, "Yeah." And again, once that kind of reality, and we're all hard headed one way or the other. Once that reality came and really hit home in my brain, I was like, okay, so what now? What can I do to because it was only adding more stress to me, right? And it was self-induced. So I had to take a step back, look at it as objectively as I could without emotions and use the skills that I learned from Treehouse to be like, okay, new season, new journey, different environment. How can I use these things that I learned in the military to help others, but also how do I adapt, right? And I think veterans and active duty, we're amazing at adapting. We're flexible individuals, and that's something that is a phenomenal quality in all of us.
You go through this metamorphosis in your life. You come out of your, cocoon, a changed man, and the change is still a daily choice as you talked about before. But what's it like? You've lived this. It's not like you're some self-help guru, you know, trying to sell a book or whatever. You've actually had to live and walk this walk. What's it
Yeah.
like, Ben, when you see that other veteran, regardless of what branch or what rank or what they did, and you're seeing the same parts of you in them, and you know what their struggle is going to be? What's it like, I guess, on both sides of the coin? What's it like when they fail and get back up again? And then what's it like when they succeed and they live that life that they want to live?
It's extremely rewarding.
Yeah.
It is extremely rewarding. It is a emotional job that I have because sometimes I want to reach through that phone and look someone in the eye and say, "Listen, like you can be something else. Like you don't have to be in this pain. You don't have to be in this struggle. You're not alone." Um, and that's difficult because sometimes people, you can't change. That's at the end of the day, change is internal, and you have to be that person. Now, if you're willing to change, great. Hop in the car, let's go. I will take you wherever you need to be, right? And or find you ways to get you help, but it has to start with you.
What is that? Because not
You
not
know,
not in the PTSD or addiction state, but in a different part of my life. Maybe we'll talk about it someday. I got very comfortable being in pain. I knew it. I knew what it was. I knew today was going to just, be bad. And I got so used to it that the idea of feeling any different scared me to death, because I'm like, wait a minute, if I have to let go of this thing that I'm comfortable with, what's going to happen next? And that really did a number on me for a while.
Yeah, the fear of the unknown, right? And so,
Absolutely. That's what it was, but it was like
yeah,
real.
and it's you're comfortable in your chaos, right? You're comfortable in whatever you have, and there's a philosophy that I talk about is growth through adversity, right? And we're in our own comfortable circle, whether or not that comfortable circle is surrounded by pain, agony, guilt, resentment. We're comfortable in there, and that's all we know. And then if we just get out a little bit further, we can kind of see that that wasn't the right thing to be in. Um, Change is difficult. Change is extremely difficult, and we can continue to our same trajectory, our same path, whether or not that's our how we talk to ourselves or whatever we are at the moment. If we continue to do that, then that's normal. That's how we're supposed to feel. That's how we think we're supposed to feel, right? And yeah, that is very difficult. It's hard to get out of that. And that's where, the community aspect comes into play. Is like,
Really.
listen, like get the community around you, because that community is going to help you get out of your own way, your own thoughts. And whenever you're able to embrace yourself in a community and build those relationships, you start seeing other people and you're like, oh, they're feeling differently. I feel different when I'm around them. And you slowly get out of that comfortable circle of whatever pain that was causing you. You step out more often and more often, more frequently, that becomes a pattern, and that pain is now subsided. Or you sit there and you work with someone. Say, hey, I'm going through X. I want to talk through it. I'm a I will always, I'm a firm believer that therapy is important, but there's various different levels of therapy. You can have the the structured counselor patient therapy, or you can have the you know best friend, or if someone who you confide in, a mentor, a coach, or whoever that you can sit there and talk to in a non-formal format, and that's therapeutic as well, right? There's all various different levels of therapy, um, but talking, when we start voicing our struggles, we start taking the power away, the power that it's internal to us, that we are able to create all these many different scenarios in our head. When we start talking and listening to how we say things and talk to others and describe it, how we're feeling, we take the power away. And oftentimes you do that more frequently, that center block of pain or guilt or whatever you're facing will be lighter and lighter and lighter.
You see this change, you make the change in yourself, you see it in other people, you work with the people at Treehouse Recovery. What's it been like getting up there and telling your story to complete strangers who, the only thing that matters to them is like, hey, I'm here, I've got to get through this. Oh my God, what do I do? And I got to listen to this guy now.
Yeah.
But you see them out in the audience looking at you. What's it like when you share your story and you're trying to connect with them?
I focus on like the three parts,
Yeah.
right? I focus on the maybe two parts, but what my story, right? My story is compelling. I've been through, I've accomplished a lot, and I've lost a lot, right? And I've sacrificed, and it was all because of my choices, right? There's consequences to your habits, right? Uh, but what I leave the audience with, or anyone with, is what am I doing now, right? How am I using these skill sets, not just in recovery, but in everyday life? What skills that I use now that you guys in the audience or listeners can be like, that sounds interesting. I've always thought about that. Let me try to employ that just a little bit, right? My three things are accountability, which is extremely difficult. Asking and holding yourself, accountable. Perception shifting, right? Is as we're able to change what's going on, how these hurdles in life come at us, and if we can change our perception of it, of some adverse reaction or adversity, or if we can change how we view a problem by, hey, I'm going to learn from this, or how can I better myself from this failure, then that's the most important thing to focus on. And lastly, just like I said about the growth through adversity, like we got to get out of this comfortable circle. Like we have to. And, for me, early on, and it still is, right? It's still stressful to go in front of an audience and talk to individuals. But guess what? I'm not in my comfortable circle. I'm getting out. So as I continue to expand and get out there and become uncomfortable, my circle continues to grow. And now I'm more versatile. Now I can understand and handle stressors in life. So I really focus on the what am I doing now aspect, because we all know a story is a story, but the what now, the so what factor of it is really something that someone can, if they can implement or just see, like, that's interesting. I could maybe use that in the relationship with my wife or the relationship with my husband or my kids. That's the focus there is let's implement something. Let's take some of these core attributes that I have, and I call it the recipe for healthy living. Let's use some of these. Let's take some of these and implement them into certain areas of your life and see if it works. If it doesn't, okay. And if it doesn't work, it could go back to the drawing board. Go back and let's work on something else. That's the big part about it. And I early on, I knew I was going to need to be vulnerable. And like I said earlier to you, vulnerability breeds encouragement.
Yeah.
And if I can't be vulnerable, then what am I doing up there? What am I doing on this show? Right? Like those are the things that I really focus on early on while doing this. Is I need to be vulnerable. I need to be able to share my story.
Two things where time flies, and this is why we did 4
Yeah.
parts instead of just one. Tell me, what are you doing like right now, or I say now, like between now and the end of the year for and with Treehouse Recovery? Because it sounds like one, the program is growing in the US, and two, that other veterans are connecting the same way you did.
Yeah, there's a couple things, some initiatives that I'm trying to create, some movements with some organizations. I don't want to say them now because I don't know if it's going to come to
All right.
reality or not. But they're big movements, right? And we are not a nonprofit organization. We are a for-profit organization, and the reality is that to get this treatment, it's expensive, right? You pay for what you get. So how can one of my jobs from now till the end of this year is to pair up with these massive veteran organizations, right? And these massive American Legion, Semper Fi, Tunnels to Towers, these massive organizations that have a lot of resources, but now they're using these resources to help. But let's use some of these resources to help veterans with mental health and substance abuse. I know the VA is a long, tedious process, and we could spend an hour, an episode talking about the VA and our beliefs about the VA. But like you said, it's reality, and to go through the VA and to to get a referral to Treehouse Recovery through the VA is work, but it's not impossible. So yeah, so there are some things that I'm working with. There's some events that I'm trying to coordinate with the Wilmington, North Carolina opening. There's some other ways that we're trying to get the word out, because as I was transitioning, and I know that a lot of individuals face this, is you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And I'm a huge advocate of do your research. There are great programs out there. You know, Trios is one of them, but we're not the program. There's other programs. Do your research. Make it your last, right? Don't go because a counselor or a buddy or someone says, hey, you need to go there. Do your research, do some soul searching, and find the one that's going to work for you. And then once you find that, put in the work to get there.
Last question.
Yeah.
This has been an amazing conversation, and it truly shows that there's really no one clear-cut way for addiction recovery or even PTSD recovery. And that's the thing I really like about this kind of conversation, Ben, is there's not a cookie-cutter solution. Everybody's different, but if the help is there, at least that's a start. How can people listening to this program, or if they run across Treehouse Recovery, or see some of your speaking engagements? I watched a couple before we talked. How can they connect with Treehouse Recovery to either help you or help Treehouse help more veterans?
Yeah. First of all, that we go online, go to treehouserecovery.com, find a phone number, and ask to speak with me. Ask to say, can you put me in contact with Ben Monnette? If you're on social media, ben.monnette on Instagram, Ben Monnette on LinkedIn, Ben Monnette on Facebook. Reach out to me. And if you're an organization that you're like, hey, I want to help, how can I help? Let's have that conversation. Let's figure out a way. If it's financially, logistically, just hey, I have a coworker, I have a son, a friend of a friend who's struggling. Would you be interested in talking to him? Absolutely, right? And I understand the fact that there's going to be reluctance when individuals talk to someone in the recovery environment, because it's change, right? And change is difficult, but it's not impossible. And once you truly understand that you're not alone in this world, you have that hope, and then that hope turns into desire. Desire turns into motivation, and then fast forward a couple months, 3 to 6 months, and then you come back, and guess what? You're a better father, you're a better husband, you're a better son, better coworker. There are all these things that you have that you can change, and it's been done. I'm living proof, and there's many other individuals that are living proof of that.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I just love this because people get hopeless, they lose hope, they lose sight, they stand on the abyss, and they just don't know what's out there. But I like the fact that one, there's a way, and two, if you're not sure about this way, Treehouse Recovery, they can call you, reach out, and you'll get back to them and tell them what's going on. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, I told you that I'm a more is more kind of a guy. Less is never more. And so instead of trying to compact everything into an hour, we're doing 4 of these. We've got 2 more coming up. We're going to talk about Team Machine, the Forge. I love that because we have to forge ourselves, and then your resilience recon consulting, Ben. And I'm interested to learn about that. So that's coming up.
Yes, absolutely.
So stay right here on Oscar Mike Radio. But I really do. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing so openly and plainly in a way that it breaks addiction down. You've even, taught me some things that I can tell other veterans about. So look, folks, this isn't the end. Come back in a month. We'll have another show with Ben. And Ben, how great it is to get to talk to you like this and really understand, how it works from the ground up. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you, Travis. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to voice the resources that are out there, and to voice that you're not alone, and there's hope out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, again, come back next month. We'll see Ben again, and I will have the links to Treehouse Recovery. I'll have the links to Ben's website and Oscar Mike Radio's show post. Look him up on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We'll see you next month. Thank you. And as we say in Oscar Mike Radio, we are mission in flight.
Remember, Monnette teaches our mission. We care about it and we do it every day. But I think there are things that just hit you and give you a reason to go on. The theme for our 2024 for Reach Across America is Live with Purpose. It just seemed to fit in with the vows of the REAP, the 10 attributes that we feel represent our United States military. I thought, what a great opportunity to put those two things together and show our kids through how we act some of the things that can make their lives better, their communities better, and by doing that, the country better. For me, Live with Purpose, I think, it's a mindset. Set some guidelines and then go out and purposefully make life different, make a change. It's an opportunity to set an example.
Thank you for listening and watching Oscar Mike Radio, where our active duty service members and veterans are in action and the mission is in flight. Oscar Mike Radio is an oversized load Co-Sinister One production. If you are a veteran or know a veteran who needs help, please dial 988 and press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line.